The morning light filtered through the stained glass windows of Rosewood Manor, casting rainbow patterns across the marble floors where Isabella Chen stood adjusting her grandmother's pearl necklace. Her reflection in the antique mirror revealed a woman transformed not just by the flowing ivory silk dress that hugged her petite frame perfectly, but by the radiant happiness that seemed to illuminate her from within. "You look absolutely breathtaking," whispered Alina, Isabella's older sister, as she carefully arranged the cathedral-length veil. Her fingers worked with practiced precision, having dreamed of this moment since they were children playing bride. With their mother's old curtains, Isabella's dark eyes sparkled with unshed tears of joy. "I can't believe this is really happening, Alina. After all those years of telling me I was too much of a dreamer, that fairy tale love didn't exist, here we are." Sighed. The October afternoon painted the manor grounds in shades of amber and crimson. Ancient oak trees stood sentinel over rolling lawns where white chairs arranged in perfect rows awaited the arrival of 200 guests. The air carried the scent of chrysanthemums and roses, mingled with the distant sound of string musicians tuning their instruments. In the groom's preparation room across the courtyard, Marcus Rivera straightened his platinum cufflinks with steady hands that betrayed none of the nervous energy coursing through him. His reflection showed a man who had earned his success, broad shoulders filling his custom tuxedo, salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, and the kind of confident smile that had charmed investors and won Isabella's heart 2 years ago. "Nervous?" asked David Kim, his best man since college, while adjusting his own tie in the mirror beside Marcus. "Excited," Marcus replied, though something flickered in his hazel eyes, a shadow that disappeared as quickly as it came. "Isabella deserves the perfect day. She's planned every detail for months." David nodded, but his expression remained thoughtful. Their friendship had weathered many storms, including the collapse of their business partnership 3 years ago. Some wounds, he knew, never fully healed. Meanwhile, in the bridal suite, Sofia Martinez struggled with the zipper of her burgundy maid-of-honor dress, her usually steady hands trembling slightly. As Isabella's closest friend since childhood, she had watched her fall head over heels for Marcus with a mixture of joy and growing dread. "Sophia, are you all right?" Isabella asked, noticing her friend's pale complexion in the mirror. "You've seemed distracted all morning." Sophia forced a smile that didn't reach her brown eyes. "It's just wedding day nerves, you know how I get it big." Events? The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, but the truth would destroy everything. She had carried the weight of Marcus's secret for 6 months now. Ever since that chance encounter in a coffee shop downtown had revealed a side of him that Isabella had never seen. The ceremony began as Father Miguel took his place at the flower-draped altar. Guests rose to their feet as the processional music swelled, their faces turned expectantly toward the manor's grand entrance. Isabella appeared like a vision, her arm linked with her father's, moving with grace down the petal-strewn aisle. Marcus's breath caught as he watched his bride approach. In that moment, surrounded by their loved ones in the golden afternoon light, he almost believed he could leave his past buried forever. The weight of his secret pressed against his chest like a physical presence, but Isabella's radiant smile made him want to be the man she thought he was. "Dearly beloved," Father Miguel's voice carried across the gathering. "We come together today to witness the union of Isabella and Marcus in holy matrimony." The ceremony unfolded with the practiced rhythm of ancient tradition. Vows were exchanged with voices thick with emotion, rings slipped onto fingers with promises of forever, and finally, the words that would bind them together: "You may kiss the bride." As Marcus lifted Isabella's veil and their lips met, applause erupted from the gathered crowd. Cameras flashed, capturing what everyone believed was the perfect moment, a love story reaching its joyful conclusion. But in the third row, Sophia's hands clenched around her bouquet until the stems nearly snapped. She watched Isabella's face, radiant with happiness and trust, and felt the secret burning inside her chest like acid. Across the aisle, David caught her eye, and she saw her own conflict reflected in his expression. The reception that followed was a masterpiece of elegance. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables adorned with golden roses and eucalyptus. The newlyweds moved through their guests like dancers, accepting congratulations and posing for photographs. their joy seemingly boundless, yet beneath the surface of celebration, undercurrents of tension began to stir. Sophia found herself watching the entrance obsessively, dreading the arrival she feared might come. David stayed close to Marcus, his protective instincts on high alert, and in the shadows of the evening, secrets that had remained buried were beginning to claw their way toward the light. The reception had reached its peak when the first course was being served. Isabella and Marcus sat at the head table there, hands intertwined, sharing private jokes and stolen kisses that made their guests smile knowingly. The photographer, James Thompson, moved discreetly through the crowd, capturing candid moments of celebration. Sophia had just begun to relax, thinking perhaps her fears had been unfounded, when she noticed James's camera suddenly drop to his side. His face had gone ashen as he stared toward the manor's main entrance. Following his gaze, Sophia felt her heart plummet into her stomach. Carmen Rodriguez stood silhouetted in the doorway, her emerald dress a stark contrast to the warm autumn colors of the wedding party. Even from across the room, Sophia could see the determination etched in every line of Carmen's posture. This wasn't a coincidence. She had come here with purpose. "Oh God," Sophia whispered, her wineglass trembling in her hands. Alina, seated beside her, followed her gaze and frowned. "Who is that woman?" "She wasn't on the guest list," Alina murmured. Her protective instincts, immediately alert, were her sister was concerned. Carmen moved through the reception with the confidence of someone who belonged, nodding politely to confused guests who stepped aside to let her pass. Her long black hair was pulled back in an elegant chignon, and despite the pain that Sophia knew lived behind those dark eyes, Carmen carried herself with dignity. Marcus noticed her first among the wedding party. Sophia watched as all color drained from his face, his fork clattering against his plate. David, ever observant, immediately leaned closer to his friend.
Marcus, what's wrong?
David asked urgently, but Marcus seemed frozen, unable to look away from the approaching figure. Isabella, still glowing with happiness, noticed her husband's sudden stillness. "Darling, you look like you've seen a ghost." "What's her words?" died as she followed his gaze and saw Carmen approaching their table. The woman moved with purpose until she stood directly before the head table. The conversations around them began to fade as guests sensed the shift in atmosphere, like animals sensing an approaching storm. "Hello, Marcus," Carmen said, her voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quiet reception hall. "Congratulations on your wedding day." Isabella looked between her new husband and this mysterious woman, confusion evident on her face. "I'm sorry, do we know you?" "I don't believe you were invited. My name is Carmen Rodriguez," the woman replied, her eyes never leaving Marcus's face. "And you're right. I wasn't invited to celebrate the man who destroyed my life." A collective gasp rippled through the nearby tables. Mrs. Adelaide Whitmore, the elderly family friend known for her sharp ears and sharper tongue, leaned forward in her chair, not wanting to miss a word. Marcus finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a croak. "Carmen, you shouldn't be here. This isn't the place." "Isn't the place for what, Marcus?" "For truth." Carmen's composure cracked slightly, revealing the raw pain beneath. "When exactly would have been the right place?" "Before you disappeared with our joint savings. Before you left me at our engagement party with a room full of guests and no explanation? Or maybe before you proposed to Isabella with the ring you bought using money from my trust fund." Isabella's hand flew to the diamond on her finger. The same ring she had admired countless times. The ring Marcus had claimed was a family heirloom. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Carmen's words sank in. Snot. "Marcus, tell me that's not true," Isabella whispered, her voice barely audible above the growing murmur of shocked guests. Sophia could remain silent no longer. The secret that had been eating her alive for months finally burst forth. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the marble floor. "It's true, Isabella. I'm so sorry, but it's all true." Sophia's voice carried across the now silent reception hall. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at her best friend. "Known for 6 months. I saw them together at a coffee shop. And Carmen told me everything. I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how to destroy your happiness." Isabella stared at Sophia in disbelief, feeling the foundation of her world crumbling beneath her feet. You knew? You've known all this time and said nothing? I thought maybe he had changed, Sophia continued desperately. I hoped that maybe love could transform him, that what you two had was real enough too. Real. Isabella's voice rose, causing several guests to stand and move closer. How can any of this be real when it's built on lies? Marcus finally stood, his hands reaching toward his bride. Isabella, please let me explain. What Carmen and I had. It was complicated. Yes, I made mistakes, but what we have is different. I love you in a way I never— Don't you dare, Carmen interrupted, her voice cutting through his words like a blade. Don't you dare diminish what we had to make yourself feel better about what you did. She turned to Isabella, her expression softening with sympathy. He told me he loved me too, right up until the day he emptied our accounts and vanished. I lost my apartment, my savings, my trust in love itself. I had to move back in with my parents at 32 years old because of what he did to me. Reception hall had become a theater of whispers and shocked faces. Some guests began quietly gathering their belongings, uncomfortable with the unfolding drama. Others remained transfixed, unable to look away from the destruction of what had seemed like perfect love. Father Miguel approached the head table, its weathered face creased with concern. Perhaps we should move this conversation somewhere more private, he suggested gently. No, Isabella said, her voice growing stronger even as tears continued to fall. Let everyone hear. Let them see what kind of man I married. She stood, her wedding dress rustling around her like armor. You're right, Carmen. I'm sorry for what he did to you. I had no idea I was celebrating my happiness on the foundation of your pain. Isabella pulled the engagement ring from her finger, the diamond catching the chandelier light one final time before she set it on the table between them. The simple gesture spoke louder than any words could have. Marcus reached for her desperately. Isabella, please, we can work through this. Everyone makes mistakes. Mistakes? Isabella's voice rose to a level her family had never heard before. Lying to me for 2 years isn't a mistake, Marcus. Stealing from the woman you claim to. Love isn't a mistake. Building our entire relationship on deception isn't a mistake. It's a choice. Choice you made every single day. Alina appeared at her sister's side, having pushed through the crowd of stunned guests. Isabella, come on. You don't have to stay here. But Isabella wasn't finished. She looked around the reception hall, at the faces of their family and friends, at the golden roses and crystal chandeliers that had seemed so perfect just hours before. I want everyone to know, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the silent room, that love without honesty isn't love at all. It's just a beautiful lie that eventually crumbles into dust. With that, Isabella gathered the train of her dress and walked toward the exit, Alina at her side. The crowd parted before them like water, guests averting their eyes from the bride's tears and shattered dignity. Sophia followed, pausing only to look back at Marcus, who stood alone at the head table looking lost and broken. Carmen had already disappeared, having said what she came to say. As the 3 women disappeared through the manor's entrance, the reception hall slowly emptied, guests murmuring among themselves about the shocking turn of events. The perfect wedding had become a cautionary tale, and the golden autumn evening had turned as cold as winter. 3 months had passed since the wedding that wasn't, and Isabella sat in Dr. Rebecca Hayes's office, sunlight streaming through tall windows onto comfortable chairs and soft earth-toned walls. The therapist's kind eyes held no judgment, only patience as Isabella worked through the complicated emotions that still surface like unexpected waves. I keep having this dream, Isabella said, her fingers twisting the simple silver band she now wore on her right hand, a gift to herself for surviving. I'm back at the manor, but instead of walking down the aisle, I'm running through empty rooms, looking for something I've lost, but I can never remember what it is when I wake up. Dr. Hayes nodded thoughtfully. What do you think you might be searching for in these dreams? Isabella considered the question, as she had learned to do over these months of healing. Maybe it's not something I lost. Maybe it's something I never really had to begin with. Like the version of Marcus I thought I knew, or the marriage I thought we were building. The past 3 months had been a journey through grief that looked nothing like she had expected. There was no casket to visit, no funeral to mark the end, just the slow process of mourning a love that had been real to her, but built on foundations of sand. Marcus had tried, reaching out countless times, flowers delivered to her office, handwritten, letters left with her doorman, even showing up at her favorite coffee shop hoping for a chance encounter. Each attempt felt like salt in wounds that were trying to heal. He keeps saying he can explain everything, Isabella continued. But what explanation could possibly make the lies okay? Sophia thinks I should at least hear him out, but I don't think I'm ready for that conversation. That's perfectly valid, Dr. Hayes assured her. Healing happens on your timeline, not anyone else's. What matters is that you're taking care of yourself and processing these feelings in a healthy way. Isabella's relationship with Sophia had been another casualty, requiring careful reconstruction. The betrayal of silence had cut almost as deeply as Marcus's deception, but their friendship had deep roots that proved resilient with patience and honest communication. She was protecting me in the only way she knew how, Isabella had told Alina during one of their long sister talks. I understand why she stayed silent, even if I don't agree with it. Alina, who'd wanted to drive straight to Marcus's apartment and demand he'd return every penny he'd spent on the wedding, had gradually learned to channel her protective fury into support for Isabella's healing process. Now, sitting in her renovated downtown loft, a space she had claimed entirely as her own, Isabella found herself designing again with a passion she hadn't felt in years. Her architectural projects had taken on new depth, focusing on spaces that could adapt and transform. Buildings that could weather storms and emerge stronger. The knock at her door came on a Thursday evening as she worked on sketches for a community center. Through the peephole, she saw Marcus standing in the hallway, looking older than she remembered, his usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. Her first instinct was to pretend she wasn't home. But something in his posture, a humility she had never seen before, made her pause. After a long moment, she opened the door, but kept the chain engaged. Isabella, he said softly, thank you for not running. Not sure I'm ready for this conversation, Marcus. I know. I don't deserve your time or your forgiveness. There are things you need to know, things that Carmen didn't tell you because she doesn't know them herself. Something in his voice, stripped of its usual confidence, made her study his face more carefully. There were new lines around his eyes and a weight to his shoulders that spoke of genuine remorse rather than simple regret at being caught. You have 10 minutes, she said, removing the chain and stepping back to let him in. Marcus entered, her space tentatively, as if afraid sudden movements might make her change her mind. He looked around at her drawings, the evidence of life being rebuilt without him. First, I need you to know that every penny Carmen lost has been returned to her, with interest. It took me liquidating most of my investments, but it's done. Isabella nodded but remained silent, waiting. Second, you deserve to know why I did what I did, not as an excuse, but as an explanation you can use however you need to. Marcus sat heavily in the chair she indicated, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. My father was a con man, Isabella. Growing up, we moved constantly. Always one step ahead of people he'd cheated. I swore I would never be like him, but when Carmen and I were together, I was drowning in debt from bad investments. I convinced myself that taking her money was temporary, that I would pay it back with the profits from a sure thing. Isabella listened without interruption as Marcus continued, but there was no sure thing. There never is. And instead of facing what I'd done, I ran, just like my father taught me to do. And then you met me, Isabella said quietly. And then I met you, and you made me want to be the man I pretended to be. I thought if I could just be different with you, if I could love you better than I'd ever loved anyone, it would somehow erase what I'd done before. Isabella absorbed this, understanding now why the revelation had felt like such a complete destruction of everything she'd believed. But you can't build something real on a foundation of lies, Marcus. Love doesn't work that way. I know that now, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I know I can't undo what I did to Carmen, or to you. I know that the man you fell in love with was partially a fiction. But Isabella, what I felt for you, that was real. Probably the most real thing I'd ever experienced. Tears slipped down Isabella's cheeks, not for their lost love, but for the man who might have been if he had chosen honesty over fear. I believe you, she said finally. But Marcus, love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice we make every day. To be truthful, to be trustworthy, to choose the other person's well-being alongside our own. You made different choices. Marcus nodded, accepting her words without argument. I'm in therapy now, trying to understand why I keep running from the truth instead of facing it. Trying to figure out how to be the kind of person worthy of real love. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of everything said and unsaid settling between them like autumn leaves. I hope you find that person, Isabella said eventually. Not for me, but for you, and for whoever you love next. Marcus stood, understanding that this conversation was both an ending and a beginning. Thank you for listening. Thank you for showing me what real love looks like, even if I wasn't ready to meet it with the truth it deserved.
After he
Left, Isabella stood at her window watching the city lights twinkle below. She thought about forgiveness, not the kind that erased consequences or rebuilt broken trust, but the kind that freed her from carrying someone else's choices as her own burden. 6 months later, Isabella would run into Carmen at an art gallery. Opening. They would talk for hours over coffee. Two women who had loved the same complicated man and survived his inability to love honestly in return. They would part as friends, bonded by shared experience and mutual healing. A year later, Isabella would meet Thomas, a carpenter who built furniture with his hands and spoke truth with his words. Their love would grow slowly, built on foundations of honesty and mutual respect, proving that fairy tale love was possible, just not the kind she had once imagined. But all of that lay ahead. For now, Isabella simply stood at her window, feeling grateful for her strength, her family, her healing, and the hard-won wisdom that true love was worth waiting for, worth building carefully, worth protecting with truth.